Finally. Why is that my reaction as of right now? It's not because ADA is back at around 16 cents. That's not the case. Did you know that the Pith network is allegedly now live on Cardano? The Cardano Foundation even made a post about it themselves. I'll actually literally show it on the screen. And I'll talk about why this goes far beyond ADA at around 16 cents, far beyond what's happening in a 24-hour or 48-hour time span. This right here, I think could hypothetically matter, especially for the long term. And here's my exact rationale. Even though I first want to clarify, nothing I say is financial advice, and I am not telling anyone to do anything. But here's the thing. The fact that the Pith network is now live on Cardano, we got to think about this. What is even Pith? Now, Pith is a project that has an aspect of Solana, but it goes far beyond that because Pith has an aspect of oracles. More specifically, the Pith network is a blockchain oracle for market data, which basically means that Pith as a project is somewhat directly competing with something like Chainlink. And Chainlink, it's one of the most massive projects out there, or should I say the most popular project out there that is focused primarily on oracles. Now here's the thing, why is this oracle sort of narrative even a big deal? We got to think about this. An oracle in this case is basically a data feed. It's a data feed that brings data from off the chain, or should I say off-chain data, and it brings that data over into the blockchain. And the reason why this even matters in the first place is because literally a lot of apps within this space can't function properly without that off-chain data. So naturally, because there is so many apps out there within this space, what happened? As a result, there's a great need for oracles, and then Chainlink is right there, and it just kind of went along with the ride. Now, Pith is way smaller than Chainlink. There's no denying that. But again, the fundamentals of Pith are really impressive, and it actually gives a use case, right? It has an actual use case. That's the thing. And the fact that it's now live on Cardano, it showcases that Cardano is doing things, because with Pith being down as of right now, which Cardano is also down, so it's a little bit no surprise. The whole market simply isn't doing the best, but I'm saying the fact that even at a time like this, Cardano is thinking about Pith, could you imagine that? That's the mindset that they have. A lot of people have completely forgotten about Pith, but Cardano's like, wait, hold up. We haven't forgotten about that. As a matter of fact, it's now live on Cardano. Could you imagine that sort of mindset? That's really tough to see sometimes when it comes to a project. This is the type of stuff we're dealing with here when it comes to Cardano. They're not playing around. That's the thing. So when I take a look at this right here, it's pretty legendary, in my opinion. I really do think so, because Pith, even though it's not the most popular project out there, and even though it's not doing the best, it is actually useful in my opinion. And the fact that Pith, people like to say, oh, it's a watered down version of Chainlink, which, I can get the argument when it comes to that, but we got to consider Pith, the fact that something of that caliber, right, something that has a use case like that being live on Cardano, it's a big thumbs up for me. However, people like to say, but didn't you say that Pith has an aspect of Solana? Why does it matter if it's now live on Cardano? Isn't Solana a competitor when it comes to Cardano? Well, true, right? I mean, Solana is, I would arguably say, a competitor when it comes to Cardano. So people like to say, how come a project like Pith that has an aspect of Solana being live on Cardano, why is that a big deal? That's not supposed to happen. But why not, though? Why not? That is my response. Because if, let's say, Cardano can work with more projects, or let's say more things are live on Cardano, it only benefits it over the long haul. There is nothing wrong with having something like Pith, which has an aspect of Solana, being live on Cardano. I think that right there, there's nothing wrong with that. Why not? If anything, it gives Cardano more exposure. Now, Cardano is more popular than Pith, I'll give it that. Of course it is, but I'm saying it doesn't mean that this is bad, though, because even if it just gains a little bit more attention as a result of this, it's already a victory, in my opinion. You know what? Small steps usually lead to things eventually, even though it may be kind of slow, but still. Any help that I see coming Cardano's way, I don't find it to be a bad thing. That is just my mindset. And the fact that Pith is now live on Cardano anyways, I think showcases the evolution of this space, right? Because years ago, people didn't really want to do that. Back then, other projects viewed other projects as kind of, true competitors like that, and they didn't really want to work with each other. And it just kind of created this environment where true mass scale adoption might seem a little bit difficult if the space isn't really truly kind of properly connected, right? Or interconnected, I should say. So now we're beginning to see this shift where there is something like Pith, which has an aspect of Solana being live on Cardano. We're starting to see an evolution when it comes to this space, despite the price charts being down, generally speaking, and despite the market not doing the best. The analogy that I have when it comes to this is, for instance, in the case of Anthony Joshua. Now, in case anyone watches boxing, I'm pretty sure they'll know who Anthony Joshua is, but in case you didn't, he's a boxer from the United Kingdom. But here's the thing. So Anthony Joshua, he lost twice to Alexander Usyk. He had a boxing match with Alexander Usyk twice, and he just simply couldn't win. Which, a lot of people thought, wow, okay, that's game over. But you know what Anthony Joshua did? He actually decided to join Alexander Usyk's team when he was training to have a match against Jake Paul. However, that right there showcases the open-mindedness of where we see things nowadays. And I kind of view it no different here, where something like Pith doesn't mind being live on Cardano and then Cardano vice versa, right? It also doesn't mind Pith being live on it, despite Pith having an aspect of Solana. Pith being live on Cardano is like Anthony Joshua training with Alexander Usyk's team. I kind of view it no different. Kind of tomato, right? That's just my mindset. But even besides that point, people sometimes like to tell me, but yeah, still, ADA, despite all that, is around 16 cents. This is really bad. But here's my mindset. I even mentioned this in one of my previous videos when it comes to Cardano. I'm not too concerned dollar cost averaging once a month approximately, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, because if let's say I'm dollar cost averaging at around 20 cents and then it goes down to around 16 cents and then maybe it goes back up to around 18 cents or maybe it goes down to 10 cents, who knows? If let's say that happens over the long haul, even though sometimes I'm dollar cost averaging high, sometimes low, sometimes somewhere in between, what happens is that over the long term, or should I say over the long haul, it just kind of starts to even itself out. And literally anything below 20 cents, I don't mind when it comes to ADA, just because we're over 5 times lower than $1. We just literally saw around $1 last year. It's like, for instance, if I went back in a time machine, would it really matter at whatever point I dollar cost average into Bitcoin at below 1 grand? Not necessarily, right? Because now Bitcoin is still at around 60 grand despite the pullback. So let's say I dollar cost average at 1,000, and let's say at 300, at 200, at 500. Now that difference right there would have been so massive at the time. But over the long haul, because Bitcoin is now at around 60 grand, that difference right there no longer really matters because it becomes negligible, right? It no longer becomes a big thing. So if ADA could hypothetically go back to $1, it doesn't really matter if I dollar cost average at like 20 cents, 15 cents, 10 cents, 13 cents, or whatever. It wouldn't really matter if it could ever return back to that point. So I'm not necessarily concerned. That is just my mindset as of right now. So when it comes to Cardano, okay, sure, it's going down, but a lot of projects out there are going down. So if the common denominator as of right now is that projects, no matter good, bad, or whatever, what I want to focus on is the ones that actually have good fundamentals, right? I want to focus my dollar cost averaging moves on projects that are actually hypothetically pretty good, in my opinion. If I walked inside a store and everything was at a discount, let's say in a make-believe scenario, it doesn't matter whatever it is. It could be a toothbrush, it could be socks, it could be shoes, it could be jeans, whatever the case may be. If they're all having a discount, of course I'm going to be choosing the ones that I actually like. That's the thing. As of right now, when it comes to this space, ADA, yeah, sure, it's having a pullback, but also a random meme I've never heard of is having a pullback. So am I going to be choosing random meme I've never heard of, or this? I don't know if I would choose the meme because I wouldn't choose it. It wouldn't make no sense, to me at least, especially if it's one I've never heard of. So when it comes to Cardano, as of right now, I'm still waiting. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still a fan of some memes out there, but not like the ones I've never heard of, just to clarify. However, when it comes to Cardano, as of right now, I'm just waiting, but nonetheless, seeing Pith now being live on Cardano at a time like this, it's pretty surprising. And I think it goes far beyond the price charts because this is for the long term. So sure, ADA could do this in the next 24 hours or in the next 48 hours, whatever the case may be. But that's all background noise to me anyways. I'm thinking about the long term. So I'm just waiting, but nonetheless, I like the fundamentals when it comes to Cardano. And I'm just a fan of what I saw so far. Again, Pith now being live on Cardano. So it's a big thumbs up for me. So I want to say thank you so much for watching. And I hope you all have a very amazing day.